Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Zaid Lasmin. I became Muslim about 10 years ago, alhamdulillah, praise be to God, and I'm very happy to be speaking with you today.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Hiba Ahmed, and I was born and raised in the United States, and I've been raised all my life as a Muslim.
I was born in 1975 to a Methodist family. So I was born and raised in a Methodist family in the middle of Illinois, in kind of a more rural area. Okay, not in a big city, in a small city. And so we attended the church regularly every Wednesday and Sunday. We do newsletters, and we're a very integral part of definitely the church society and whatnot. So I always grew up going to Sunday school and learning about God and learning about the Gospels and the Bible and whatnot. And then came the time basically for confirmation. So when you affirm your belief in God and belief in the religion that you've chosen, being Methodist and whatnot. So in the process of taking these confirmation classes, basically I got into a discussion with a pastor about just exactly the belief system. That's what we believe. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't figurative. This is truly, truly what you believe, that Jesus is God. And the pastor, of course, said yes. So then I remember after that class, then going with my mother and father home in the car and saying exactly the same thing to them. And so my mother turns around in the car and says, yeah, of course we believe this. You know, this is what we've believed, this is what your grandmother believed and everything. What are you saying? And I'm like, well, I don't understand why Jesus, peace be upon him, would actually, you know, not say, I, Jesus, am God. And why does it have to be so abstract in the Bible? Why isn't there some exact phrase that just says, I, Jesus, am God, or some very clear way? And so from that point on, I always had some kind of doubt in my mind about, of course, Jesus being God, and I never really believed that Jesus was God. And so that was basically at the beginning of high school. So then after 4 years of high school and then 4 years of college, then I started to look or re-look and rethink religions through again. Islam was the only thing, no matter what, I kept looking at it again and again and again. And everything that I read in the Quran, I believed. And everything I'd read in the Bible, I had some kind of issues with. And so basically, I couldn't deny it anymore, and I decided to become Muslim. So when I first became Muslim, that was like, it has to be one of the happiest days of my life. Okay? In that moment, it was a great source of happiness. And here in the States, when you become Muslim, what seems to be the trend is that that person that wants to become Muslim will go to the masjid on Friday for Friday prayers, and will stand up in front of the entire congregation and will declare their shahada. So you have plenty of witnesses and whatnot for everything. And so, though it's not necessarily required, that seems to be what we do here in the U.S. And so that moment was just amazing. I was trembling. I can remember barely being able to say it. You know, it was a very emotional experience. Immediately after, you know, every single person in the masjid, there was like nobody that left that masjid, you know, probably 500 people. Everybody came up and hugged me, shook my hand, cried. It was just a really great time.
Wow. When Zaid first converted, my wife and I were both concerned about his religion.
When I told my mother and father the decision that I had made and that I'd actually done it, this was a major problem. And so there was a period of about 2 weeks where they just wouldn't speak to me. And literally it was said to me that you're thrown out of the family. It was a very, very difficult time in my life.
خلال عطلة الدراسة قرر زيد السفر إلى مصر لدراسة اللغة العربية والقرآن.
So looked all over the Middle East and whatnot and found a school in Egypt. And so went to a school in Egypt. It's called Markaz Fajr in Egypt. Excellent place. And I went there and I lived there for about a year. And so when I lived there, you know, I met all kinds of Muslims from all over the world, from Europe and, you know, Pakistan and India and whatnot.
Russia,
Bosnia, lots of Russians actually, and great people. Anyway, long story short, so I lived in Egypt there for a year, and I studied Arabic, and that's where I learned to speak Arabic.
في تلك الأثناء تعرف زيد وهبة في الجامعة في إلينوي.
My parents are originally from Egypt. They were born and raised there, and their ancestry is Egyptian. They immigrated to the United States about 37 years ago, and I was actually born in Tennessee, and then lived there till I was 12 years old. Then my mother, who is a civil engineer, got a job in Texas, so we relocated to Texas, and I went to school at a Catholic all-girls school. My parents really liked that because they said the nuns were going to keep me in line, and I eventually went to college, got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and then went to the University of Illinois for my master's degree. I was working in a lab, and he used to come and borrow certain equipment from there. And he didn't actually know that I was Muslim because I wasn't outwardly Muslim. But at the time, he had started his faith journey and was studying Islam. And so when he found out I was Muslim, through conversation, he started asking me all these questions that I couldn't answer because I didn't know very much. So his questions pushed me to really go on my own faith journey and to say, okay, if I'm going to label myself a Muslim, then I better know what that means, and I better make sure that I have a conviction in that and choose it. So, you know, some people look at us and think, oh, did he become Muslim for you? And I actually tell people that he's the one that really pushed me to figure out what I believe. So it was very surprising and interesting to me, and very humbling to me, that this person who was, you know, born and raised in America and raised Christian was interested in the religion that I claimed. And that was another reason that kind of pushed me into starting to want to have answers, because if he actually knew more about Islam than me at that point.
بعد أن حصلت هبة على درجة الماجستير في الهندسة الميكانيكية، التحقت بالعمل في شركة خدمات نفطية في تكساس. كانت إحدى المهندسات القليلات.
So I was one of the few engineers working for this company, and unfortunately I was very sexualized and objectified in the workplace. And what I mean by that is men would tell sexual jokes around me. They would touch me in ways that were inappropriate. At the time I was not covering. And it was right before September 11th. I remember for a long time I was really struggling with my identity as a Muslim, because at this point I had started studying Islam more because of my interaction with the person who would become my husband, and my interaction with different Muslims in graduate school. But at the same time I still was not confident enough or ready to put on the veil or to start to show an outward appearance of being a Muslim. Then September 11th happened, and I was at work at the time, and I remember my boss was saying to another person that I worked with, we need to just go over there and drop nuclear bombs on all of them. And he was clearly talking about the Muslims. And that was the first time I really started to feel like the other. But prior to that, I had never questioned being an American. I had never questioned my status in American society. But with that statement and with the events of 9/11, all of a sudden, I was the stranger. I was the other. I was almost, you know, the enemy in this country. And it really shook me. It shook me to really think about who I was and how I wanted to present myself in society. 5 days after September 11th, I put the scarf on in public for the first time. So I was still working. I would wear normal business clothes, pants and shirts and this kind of thing. But I would have a scarf on. And then about 6 months after that, when the rhetoric at work was very polarized, and I was constantly having fights with my coworkers about being Muslim and about 9/11 and about, you know, their stereotypes of Muslims, and also just the whole sexualized nature of the environment, I decided that I didn't want to work there anymore. At the same time, I had also been studying and taking classes in Islam, and I would say that my faith really increased. So I quit 6 months after September 11th, and the day I quit, I started to cover fully in this way that you see me now. And this was about a year and a half before my husband and I eventually married.
The first time that I saw you, really what was going through my head was, you know, wow, is this really the same person? Has she changed? And, you know, from the person that I knew before, you know, from just, you know, even a little over a year before. And so that was something that went through my head. But then, of course, we had conversations, and it was clear that you still were of the same mindset and whatnot. So that was put to rest. But then also, too, I have to admit, and the other thing that was going through my head at that moment was, wow, so really? I'm Muslim, and now I'm going to marry a true Muslim wife here. I'm
Like
getting
sealed the deal, huh?
full package, and, you know, and really, there's no hiding anymore when you go out, because, you know, now when we go out, it's like, there's the Muslim couple.
But it was strange for you initially to go out in public with me, right?
It was strange. I mean, I have to admit, you know, my appearance is that of still an American. Now I'm 100% of the time Muslim, and yes, you know, we're getting stares all the time, and I go out by myself, I don't get stared at nearly as much as I do with her. But I mean, the communities here are great, and because I think we try to be outgoing, we try to speak to the people, tell them about who we are. It's not just, you know, everything's Islam all the time. No, this is my daughter, this is my son, this is my wife, and we're a family. Then people can identify, and they feel more comfortable with us. And they're not going to forget us because of how we look, but then they'll remember our Islam and our character because of the people that we are and how we communicate with the people.
Well, you know, Zaid's a very good brother. I mean, he was actually generous enough to take time out of his schedule to talk to me about Islam when I came over here. And I really needed someone to learn about Islam from, because I've been in Albuquerque my whole life, and I never ever once heard about Islam. I never ever once heard about Prophet Muhammad.
زيد كان طفلا متبنى وقد نشأ كطفل وحيد، إلا أنه عثر على والديه البيولوجيين وواجه بعض المشكلات في علاقته بهما.
One time with my biological mother, after we found her, we went as a family, Hiba and my daughter, and we traveled to visit her back in Illinois. And my sister was having a softball game that night, and we were all excited to go. We're like, oh, let's all go to the softball game. Everybody's really excited. But then my mother turned to me and was like, but you know, Hiba's going to have to stay in the van. And I'm like, well, why does she have to stay in the van? You know, and you know, clearly it dawned on me why immediately. But, you know, and I pushed her to why, and there was this uncomfortable silence between us. But she was embarrassed, and this is this, you know, being from a small city, everybody's Christian, everybody's white, and this new thing that's coming in, that was definitely a part of it. But then also, too, having a Muslim in the family, you know, still, this is only 3 years after, I believe, 9/11. This is still a really uncomfortable thing and time, and people don't understand Islam and Muslims, and what do they do, and why do they have to dress like that? Why are they so different? That, you know, it was going to be a really embarrassing thing that she wouldn't be able to explain away, and she didn't want to have herself in that situation. And so that was, you know, unfortunate for me. It was very disappointing. I understood her standpoint and why she didn't want to do it, but, you know, I'm very proud of who I am and who my family is.
Bismillah.
Bismillah. I mean, if you're treating the family right and doing the right thing, you know, to them and for them and whatnot, then eventually any, you know, issues they have, stereotypes and whatever, those will all go away.
Maybe we can fly kites again next weekend.
It's easy now for my father, for example, to turn around to anybody and say, oh, but they're Muslim. Yeah, but they treat me so well, and they love the kids love them. I don't need you, you know, this is my son, this is my family,
Right.
and I don't care what you. My parents, my adoptive parents, would relay this to me and then ask me and feel comfortable with me going to the church, the same one that I knew everybody in, I grew up in and whatnot, to talk about Islam and what I believed in my new religion.
I really highly respect Brother Zaid and his wife. They are, in American society, they are very courageous people. What I saw from them is the service that they were providing to the community in terms of dawah work and trying to bring the Muslim community in Albuquerque together. That wasn't always an easy task for them.
يسير زيد ووالده كل صباح بعد صلاة الفجر إلى مقر جامعة نيو مكسيكو، حيث يعمل زيد أستاذا مساعدا في مجال الهندسة الميكانيكية.
I received my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Illinois in the years, 98, 2000, and 2006, all from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And immediately after I finished my PhD, I moved to the University of New Mexico, where I accepted a position as an assistant professor of mechanical engineering. And then this is all on the order of seconds or something. And so this is this infamous spot that I keep coming back to again and again, and I never finish this off. But it takes time in the beginning for the... So I've been here since 2006, just finishing up my 5th year right now. So in my position, I teach undergraduate and graduate students. I teach typically anywhere between 30 and 60 undergraduate students in mechanical engineering undergraduate classes. And then I teach graduate classes as well on advanced topics such as micro nanotechnology, continuum mechanics, advanced material sciences, and whatnot. And I always keep a complement of graduate students on hand. At any time, I usually have between 8 and 12 graduate students, so about 5 or 6 PhD students and 5 or 6 master's students as well. And so we have weekly meetings and we discuss various topics in micro and nano systems and whatnot. You know, I've had many different conversations with Muslims from all over campus and whatnot in different fields, but also too from different countries and different backgrounds. And then also to devise, have a cultural background to draw on in order to derive my, my interpretation of the Quran and the way that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, lived his life. I don't have that, so I have to go to the sources themselves and read it and try to understand and read what other people have said in using evidence and whatnot. But I find a lot of people just go off of what their cultural biases are because that's what they were born into. And so a lot of them appreciate conversations with me because I'm so fresh, I guess, and I'm untainted from these cultural biases. But it's an uphill battle for me being a convert simply because I don't have any kind of cultural basis telling me to go one way or another. It's all new to me. The state of New Mexico is very diverse, so you have, of course, people coming from Western European backgrounds and meeting up with people of Hispanic backgrounds predominantly. And so we have these two cultures that are coming together, and it makes a very different culture overall in the state. But what's really nice about that is everybody understands that everybody else is coming from some kind of different background, and so typically people are a lot more open-minded here. But unfortunately, one time there was a slight incident between my wife, who was coming to visit me at the university, and actually a student on campus who was evangelical, who likes to preach the word of God, and specifically in his interpretation of it, and that Jesus is his savior and that should be everybody else's savior. And so he actually put my wife on the spot and wouldn't really let her go by him at one point and was questioning her about her beliefs and why does she have to cover, why does she believe this? Very uncomfortable situation for my wife, who's not used to that kind of thing and that upfrontness, and her being alone, and it was in public, but she was alone and just trying to get to me. She felt a little uncomfortable at that moment. So, but those incidents, I would have to say, are few and far between.
When I decided to wear the niqab, my parents, I think, were very scared, and this was not something, my mom doesn't cover in this way, and Egyptian, culturally in Egypt, this was a little bit too much for them. So initially they were like, no, you're not leaving the house like this. And so I had to basically defend my decision to my parents and really explain to them why I wanted to do this, and I really wanted their support. And I think they were really just scared for me. They were scared for my safety, and knowing that this was, so soon after 9/11, and that we had heard stories of negative backlash against Muslims. They were just worried about when I went out into public, but you know, after a while, all their friends would say, "Why are you wearing that?" And I would defend myself and explain to them why, and told them that this is something that I religiously feel brings me closer to God and is pleasing to God. And I think they respected me after that. So now my parents are my biggest fans and biggest supporters, and we've come a long way in the journey.
I am very proud to be married to her. I didn't tell her she had to wear it. I still do not tell her she has to wear it. If she wanted to take it off, though, I'd be disappointed. That's her choice. And I believe, you know, that's absolutely a part of Islam, is to cover everything except for, there's a specific saying of the Prophet, cover everything except for this and for this. Okay, and so that's fine. And, you know, but I'm very happy that she chooses to dress like this, to imitate actually the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and some of the, you know, the pious women that were at the time of the Prophet and since then.
I wanted my sexuality and my body to only be in the context of my marriage, and to be an appreciation of in a commitment with my husband. And so because of those experiences, and this is actually something very common with women who become Muslim, is they love the modesty and the covering in Islam, because for them it's dignified, it's a self-value. I really believe that every person, the decisions that they make and their faith is between them and God alone will judge them. My responsibility as a parent is to teach my child the means of self-analysis, the ability to think and to question, and to figure out how to be convinced of something, and then to give her the morals that I truly believe in. I see young girls in the West and in American society, and even in the Middle East and in the Muslim countries now as well, this obsession with their body and their body image is so great now that we're no longer developing our daughters' mental and intellectual abilities, and we're actually cutting down their self-confidence when we put all of their values in their bodies. Not only that, I want my daughter to grow up being a strong, independent, intelligent woman who is proud of who she is not afraid to tell people who she is and to show who she is and to know why she believes what she believes. And I also don't want her to have to be a victim of abuse or sexual objectification, and that's why I teach my daughter modesty. Now, do I make her wear a hijab? No, she does it because she's imitating mommy. And I've been very clear with her that until she hits puberty, it's not a requirement on her. But she likes to do it, and she wears the pink and the purple, and she thinks it's beautiful, and it's her way of dressing up. But I want her to know that when she makes a choice, that she has that right to choose, and she should stand by what she believes and not to compromise because of what other people think of her. K. L. And so I actually homeschool. I teach my daughter at school, at home, and I also want her to be able to read the Quran in Arabic so that she can go and learn her religion herself without a translation or without somebody else telling her what her religion says. And so because of this, I actually teach her one day in Arabic and one day in English, and I encourage her and help her to memorize verses from the Quran. So I'm trying as much as possible to give her the things that I didn't have, which is a supportive Muslim environment so that she doesn't have to question her identity. She doesn't have to feel like she's the weird one or the stranger or the outcast, and give her that confidence so when she does go out into the world, she knows who she is and she can represent herself in a very confident way.
I first met Hiba. She was a volunteer teacher at the Islamic Center. She and her sister Sarah were bringing groups of women together after the Friday Jummah and studying Quran, understanding the passages, understanding the teachings of the religion, as well as helping women and even teenagers and young girls adjust to some of the tensions and just some of the challenges that we as Muslim Americans encounter every day in our society.
I met Hiba about 6 or 7 months ago. She's a very kind lady. She's offered her services to a very vast amount of people in teaching us how to read the Quran, which is, of course, a foreign language, and it does take a lot of work and a lot of practice. And she's dedicated her time to us, free of charge.
تسافر هبة إلى ألباكيركي عدة مرات خلال الأسبوع للتطوع، وهذا ما يتيح لها الوقت للتسوق في المتاجر غير المتاحة حيث تعيش. الحياة في نيو مكسيكو توفر الكثير من دروس التاريخ الغنية.
So we love being in New Mexico because New Mexico has mountains and hiking and amazing natural formations. The weather's great here. So, you know, just like every other family, on the weekends, we love to have picnics. We love to go hiking. My Zaid built me a swimming pool that's totally private, so we love to swim in the summers. And in the winters, you know, we get snow, we go sledding and have snowball fights and you know, have just a great time. I take my friends everywhere. TV, to the table, to bed. Where's the blanket though? You know, we are just like every other family trying to teach our children and have good, wholesome fun, and we interact with our society. I don't feel that we're inhibited or limited in any way in the way that we live our lives.
Allahu Akbar. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Zaid Lasmin. I became Muslim about 10 years ago, alhamdulillah, praise be to God, and I'm very happy to be speaking with you today.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Hiba Ahmed, and I was born and raised in the United States, and I've been raised all my life as a Muslim.
I was born in 1975 to a Methodist family. So I was born and raised in a Methodist family in the middle of Illinois, in kind of a more rural area. Okay, not in a big city, in a small city. And so we attended the church regularly every Wednesday and Sunday. We do newsletters, and we're a very integral part of definitely the church society and whatnot. So I always grew up going to Sunday school and learning about God and learning about the Gospels and the Bible and whatnot. And then came the time basically for confirmation. So when you affirm your belief in God and belief in the religion that you've chosen, being Methodist and whatnot. So in the process of taking these confirmation classes, basically I got into a discussion with a pastor about just exactly the belief system. That's what we believe. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't figurative. This is truly, truly what you believe, that Jesus is God. And the pastor, of course, said yes. So then I remember after that class, then going with my mother and father home in the car and saying exactly the same thing to them. And so my mother turns around in the car and says, yeah, of course we believe this. You know, this is what we believe, this is what your grandmother believed and everything. What are you saying? And I'm like, well, I don't understand why Jesus, peace be upon him, would actually, you know, not say, I, Jesus, am God. And why does it have to be so abstract in the Bible? Why isn't there some exact phrase that just says, I, Jesus, am God, or some very clear way? And so from that point on, I always had some kind of doubt in my mind about, of course, Jesus being God, and I never really believed that Jesus was God. And so that was basically at the beginning of high school. So then after 4 years of high school and then 4 years of college, then I started to look or re-look and rethink religions through again. That was the only thing, no matter what, I kept looking at it again and again and again, and everything that I read in the Quran, I believed. And everything I'd read in the Bible, I had some kind of issues with. And so basically, I couldn't deny it anymore, and I decided to become Muslim. So when I first became Muslim, that was like, it has to be one of the happiest days of my life. Okay, in that moment, it was a great source of happiness. And here in the States, when